Still confident in Secretary Austin, sir?
President Biden refusing to talk about the scandal that could have put American lives in danger. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin facing calls to resign after keeping both Biden and senior officials in the dark on his recent hospitalization. For 3 whole days, America's defense secretary went AWOL with 2 wars raging in Ukraine and Israel. That's because he was secretly in the ICU after complications following elective surgery. Austin's second in command was put in charge while she was on vacation in Puerto Rico. But even she didn't know that her boss was in the hospital. According to Politico, one DOD official was told by Austin's aides that the secretary was, quote, working from home for the week. And the Pentagon now claims it didn't give an update about Austin because his chief of staff had the flu. Thankfully, Austin is no longer in the ICU, but he remains in the hospital. But so far, it looks like he will face no consequences for his deception.
I want to make sure I put a fork in my answer to you. There is no plans for anything other than for Secretary Austin to stay in the job and continuing the leadership that he's been demonstrating.
The New York Post pointing out a critical question on the scandal. Quote, how could President Biden not notice his defense secretary was missing? And outrage continues to grow, and it's not just Republicans who are upset.
If this administration would conceal a mere elective minor surgery for a cabinet secretary, what might they be concealing about Joe Biden's health?
This was not an appropriate step, not an appropriate way to handle what was his hospitalization.
We're at a time of a lot of turmoil internationally, and suddenly have the Secretary of Defense, more than just a matter of wasn't there, actually sent over false information saying I'm working from home when he's not actually available at all.
It is possible that his health condition or his medical condition clouded his judgment at that time. That could have been the reason why he decided not to notify people as he should have. That said, it's clear that the system broke down.
You know, Dana, we all wish the defense secretary well and hope that he is recuperating. But it wasn't just 3 days. He also underwent surgery on December 22nd. And according to a former chief of staff for the Department of Defense, the White House Situation Room keeps track in real time of the whereabouts of all senior officials, including key cabinet secretaries. And there's never a time when the secretary truly goes off the grid. Now, it seems, given where we are in the world, that this guy should not be off the grid for more than 10 seconds.
Right. He's 6th in line to the presidency. I felt like this could have been a Veep episode if we still had that show around, and I wish we did. But the real life situation, one, in some ways you're like, it's so baffling, it's almost hilarious, but it's also extremely serious. So as fellow Democrats of his has said, well, it was an extreme lack of judgment, okay? And it was reckless. What about our allies? Well, it's not like it's been a quiet time for the U.S. military in the past few weeks. You've had our troops being attacked in the Middle East. You've had a possible Suez Canal crisis. You've had a situation where you have the action taken by the United States to kill an Iranian-backed militiaman in Baghdad while he is not able to respond. Now, they say the chain of command says that CENTCOM had the opportunity, if they found it, to go ahead and strike. But this is the other thing I would say. For President Biden, this is so insulting to him. And if he lets it stand, I think he's making a huge mistake. He is in a position right now where his administration is being questioned on competence. And this shows that there is no competence. They haven't had a cabinet meeting since October 2nd. I don't know if any of them talk to each other. Meanwhile, you have the Secretary of State running all around the world trying to prevent the war from widening. Right. And he needs the cover of the defense secretary. He has no idea that anybody is out. And I feel like I don't like it when people say he should be fired. But I do think if Biden allows him to stay, that's another lack of judgment because it's just too serious to let it go.
You know, Jesse, what Dana says is absolutely true. I mean, everyone is starting to worry about what's going on in the Biden administration, who's running it. From the beginning, we kept saying who's running it. But when you think about our adversaries, you think about Xi Jinping and you think about, you know, Putin, they're saying, you know, this guy's had surgery. They know what's going on. He's MIA. Biden doesn't even know he's MIA. We can do whatever we want, not fear that they won't even get their cavalry around together.
Well, Judge, who could forget Robert McNamara's rhinoplasty on the eve of the Tet Offensive, or Donald Rumsfeld's lipo during Operation Iraqi Freedom? Listen, I did not expect an elective surgery scandal in Biden's cabinet to be with the defense secretary. I was thinking maybe Mayor Pete or perhaps Kamala Harris. But I need to know a little bit about the surgery. Was it cosmetic? Was it a breast reduction, or was it something like LASIK? Because that will definitely make me a little bit more sympathetic. But you have to tell your boss when you're undergoing a procedure. Like when Greg flew to Germany for the emergency heightening procedure and he came back 5'7", he just said procedure. And we didn't ask any questions because of HIPAA. Now, if you're Biden and you're
you just violated that.
I'm sorry. If you're Biden and you're summoning everybody to the Situation Room and you say, all right, get me the Secretary of Defense. Right. Oh, well, he's in the ICU. He can't be reached. All right, well, what happened to the Chief of Staff? Could we find out? Well, the Chief of Staff is sick with the flu. Or can I get the deputy? Oh, sorry, the deputy's on vacation in Puerto Rico and she's not coming back. You're now trying to maybe ask Sticky Sammy to come to the Situation Room. That's how far down the totem pole you're going. I do now question Austin's judgment, because as the defense secretary, Judge, you are supposed to plan for contingencies. You were supposed to plan for worst case scenarios. You war game. But he didn't think that anything could have gone wrong during a procedure at age 70. So he's not telling him this. What else isn't he telling the commander in chief? I can't imagine what this would have been like if this had happened during the Trump administration. This would have been a constitutional crisis. This would have put all of our national security at stake. This would have been a chain of command. They would have run the defense secretary out of town by Friday. That's what it, and then they would have gone on the Sunday shows, Judge, and they would have said, it's time to have the adults back in the room. This is a clown show.
You know, Greg, he is a four-star general, and from the Army, he would not have tolerated this from anyone who worked for him. And yet he's not offering up his resignation, and even Biden said he wouldn't accept it if he did.
Things have changed in the last couple of years. This is part of a, I mean, if this were just an exception, it would probably be a smaller story, but it's part of a greater mosaic of malfeasance, right? Every choice, every decision, every action has some kind of opportunity cost. For example, if you fight an unnecessary war, those billions could have gone somewhere else. Think of all the intellectual effort that goes into that. So we're in this era of massive opportunity costs because the Democrats' priorities are so far out of whack. Instead of focusing on real external threats, they put their eggs in something else. Domestic terror hoaxes, DEI and ESG in the military, actually demonizing our military, suggesting and then doing research that they might actually be white supremacists in our midst. You have January 6th theater. You have troops being forced to read Marxist literature. And there's a cost in this. In the realm of defense, the chief concern should be defense, protecting the homeland. But that suffers when you politicize the military. When you put political and cultural ideas in front of that, you marginalize the efficiency, the deadliness, and the readiness and the competence of our military. You put feelings over fighting. And you do that when you have two wars raging, when you have Iran making trouble, you got China being China, while other countries see their homeland as worthy of defense. Ours sees America as the source of all of our problems. And now you see the cost. And this is a small part of a massive one, because this mindset is a mistake that is upstream from all our other concerns. So it flows down to, you know, the competence in corporations, leadership in the military, in education, in culture. Basically, we have a manufactured self-loathing that is undermining confidence in everything.
You know, Jessica, we're really involved in a regional war. Dana said it. Our service members are being attacked in Iraq and in Syria that can verge on a world war. Yeah. And we know that Joe Biden didn't even know until January, I believe it was the 5th, 5 days later, that his defense, as they call it, anyway, was not available. I mean, who is making these decisions? Who's available? The chief of staff is sick. This deputy is in vacationing. What is going on?
Everyone is asking themselves that. I haven't heard from one Democrat or seen one Democrat who's been asked about this on TV or otherwise who hasn't been in total shock and surprise at this, especially that the deputy would not have gone on vacation, right? If she knew that this was happening.
Back.
Right. And it's extremely disturbing. It is incongruous with a 4-star general and just the way that he grew up and the way that he served, which makes you question whether there might be something else going on. I think that's what John Brennan was saying in that interview, that there appears to be a clouded judgment moment. I don't think that this reflects some rot within the administration or the government, and I don't think that the administration certainly sees these as needless wars. They see them as wars, obviously, that we should be involved in, and it's important to protect democracy. But at this critical flux moment, and I was particularly struck, we're listening to President Biden today at the Emmanuel AME Church today giving remarks, and he's interrupted by protesters who want to talk about Gaza. This is an issue that is eating up our country. It is consuming us and our national consciousness and obviously our consciousness abroad. And you want to know that someone who is in such an important position of power is there. And if he's not there, that you know why he isn't there and that the proper line of command is in place. I assume that nothing will change in terms of a resignation on this, though Friday could come and then we could have those Sunday shows. It can take a few days for it to unfold, and the Biden administration was obviously caught flat-footed by this, but he has a lot of explaining to do, and it's a critically dangerous moment in history for this to have happened.
The interesting thing is that day that he had the surgery, it was December 22nd. He didn't tell anybody about that either.
Well, he should have, but
so
it's elective
so what I'm
surgery.
saying, my question is, when you comment on what Brennan is saying, Brennan was saying, maybe he had a clouded judgment, he had to go into the ICU. He didn't have a clouded judgment before he went in for elective surgery.
No, that was reckless judgment.
That works. Yes. Okay.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.